Heyo everyone! The Nintendo Switch was released about 6 years ago in the spring of 2017, so naturally, people have begun speculating on what the successor to Nintendo's breakout hybrid console will be. As of the time I'm making this video, we don't really have any sort of concrete details on the Switch 2 or whatever it's going to be called. In this video, I'm just going to call it the Switch 2. We do know, however, that Nintendo has sent out dev kits, indicating that they are preparing a reveal for their new console sooner rather than later. As of right now, it looks like Nintendo is shooting for a 2024 release date, most likely in the second half, but don't be surprised if they go for a spring or summer release like they did with the original Switch. There is speculation that they're going for the later 2024 release date to make sure they have ample supply as to avoid the shortages and scalpers that plague the Xbox Series and PS5 releases. I normally don't really make videos like this, and since we don't really have any details released to the public as of right now, I'm just kind of talking about what I think the Switch 2 needs to be successful. If you enjoy the video, leave a like and subscribe, it means a lot. Anyway, let's fire up the hype machine and begin speculating. Alright, let's just get this one out of the way right now. The Joy-Cons are packed with technology that pair up perfectly with the Switch and are a huge part of what makes the hybrid console so appealing with all of the different gameplay mechanics that the little controllers offer. That being said, all of that technology kinda gets put to the side if the joysticks don't work. If you didn't know, the Switch's Joy-Cons have some of the worst drift stick that we've ever seen. Basically, some people have encountered an issue where their joysticks will randomly move to a certain direction and input commands into the game, even if they're not touching the controller. Obviously, this is bad and very frustrating, considering that there isn't really an easy or effective way to fix this, and buying a new Joy-Con is about $40. Some people have claimed to have run into this problem multiple times, while others haven't had any troubles at all. Unfortunately for me, I've ran into this problem a couple of times, making a few of my Joy-Cons basically unusable. Thankfully, Nintendo started a program where they will fix your Joy-Cons for free, even if they're past the warranty date. All you gotta do is ship them to Nintendo and they'll send a repaired Joy-Con back. Interestingly enough, even though there has been a couple of Switch refreshes over the years, Nintendo hasn't updated the Joy-Cons. So whenever the Switch 2 does come out, Nintendo really needs to get this thing figured out. It's so frustrating for consumers, but I'm also sure they don't want to keep having to repair controllers because they're selling faulty merchandise. The Switch fanbase is massive. As of June 2023, the Switch has sold over 129 million units, making it Nintendo's best-selling home console of all time, even ahead of the Wii. In fact, the Switch is only behind the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo DS in sales, which makes complete sense because I feel like everyone and their grandma has a Switch these days. Since the player base is so massive, it should be a top priority for Nintendo to transition its Switch users to the Switch 2. As I said in my intro, the Switch has been out for about 6 years and has had some incredible games released on it, so if the Switch 2 is going to launch without any sort of backwards compatibility, they're really going to limit what people can play on the new console. With the growing popularity of digital purchases, it seems more important now than ever for players to be able to transfer their bought games from the original Switch to its successor. Not to mention all of the progress that people might have in games like Animal Crossing or Splatoon. People would be pissed if this stuff didn't transfer over, or if you couldn't even play it. Why would you upgrade from your Switch if you're being forced to drop the games that you actually want to play? Thankfully, the Nintendo president said in an interview that Nintendo is doing as much as possible to transition smoothly. We'll see how that pans out. Another thing that would be nice to include, although I don't think it's completely necessary, is the backwards compatibility of accessories like Joy-Cons. Like we talked about earlier, those puppies are expensive, so it would really suck to just have to ditch them and buy a bunch of new controllers when the updated console comes out. Okay, so this one kind of plays into the last point. I talked about it briefly earlier, but the PS5 and Xbox Series launched in the middle of the pandemic, and as a result, the supply was pretty hard to come by. Now in 2023, it doesn't appear as if there are really any supply chain issues still lingering, but I still think that it should be said. The Switch 2 needs to have a good launch. This means having available stock for the massive player base, backwards compatibility for the reasons I mentioned earlier, And probably the most important thing, launching with a killer app. Yes, a pack-in title like Wii Sports would be welcome, but there has to be something huge, something that people need to play on a new console, an exclusive reason to upgrade. The Switch launched with some pretty big titles in 2017. Not all of them were exclusive, but if you were going to buy them, you were probably going to wait to buy them on the Switch for the portability and novelty of the new console. When the Switch 2 releases, it's gonna need some sort of big title to encourage people to move on from the original Switch. Is it going to be the next 3D Mario game, finally? Maybe Metroid Prime 4? Mario Kart? Or perhaps even the untitled Princess Peach game? Or it could be something not even announced yet. Whatever it is, it needs to be exclusive to really push people on from the Switch. If it's launching on the Switch 1, then why would people need to get the new console? There needs to be a real reason to get the Switch 2. Not sure what Nintendo has planned, but it's gotta be something good. This is probably a reach, and I don't know if it's completely necessary, but it is something that I think is very consumer friendly. At this point, there are 3 different Switch options available for purchase. The standard one, which includes 2 Joy-Cons and a dock, the cheaper option in the Switch Lite, which is smaller and handheld only with no option for a change in Joy-Cons, and then there's the higher end OLED Switch, which has an updated screen, hinge, and speakers. When the original Switch launched, Nintendo was in a bit of a tough spot after the lackluster sales of the Wii U, so I'm not sure if they ever even considered producing multiple options at launch. Whether they couldn't really afford to do that, or if they just wanted to fix their branding and focus on one console, I don't know. What I do know, though, is that most consoles now have a variety of options at launch. For example, the PS5 has 2 different options with the digital only and physical versions. The Xbox Series is more on the extreme side, with the Series X being the main cell and the Series S as the digital only, less powerful, cheaper option. I mean, even the Steam Deck has a variety of options. I don't think the Switch needs to make 2 different consoles like what Xbox did, but I do think it would be nice to have some sort of variety. Maybe a console only version without the dock, or bring back a higher end OLED version, since the rumors are that Nintendo is reverting back to an LCD screen to keep the price low. And then of course the standard version, which is the LCD console and dock. Or special editions. I'd love different color options for the Switch too. Different storage options could also be offered, because the 32 gigabytes of internal storage on the Switch ain't cutting it. Whatever they do, it would be good for the buyers to have some choices. The Switch has done an incredible job working with third-party developers to get both new and old releases on the hybrid console. The Switch's massive success also means that devs want to put their games on that console to reach as many people as possible. Quick digression, this is honestly great for gamers who never experienced these older games in their prime. Now they can buy a, hopefully, polished up version and play it almost anywhere thanks to the Switch's mobility. It gives a lot of older classics a new life, especially since some games aren't playable on the current gen consoles. Anyway, the Switch can go even further with third-party support. It's way past time that we start getting some decent apps on this thing. I think the Switch could benefit massively from having more video apps on the platform. Seriously, why isn't Netflix on this? The Wii had it, and it was great for a living room streaming option. I think it would be a huge missed opportunity if the Switch doesn't actively pursue popular apps on the tablet console. It doesn't have to have everything like Facebook or TikTok or whatever, but it should at least have support for some apps like Netflix or Disney Plus, or even apps like Discord. The mobility of the Switch, and theoretically the Switch 2, makes this a perfect pairing. Please, don't miss out on this, Nintendo. Yeah, I know, this one could have probably been paired with the last point, but I didn't want to make a video called 9 things the Switch 2 needs, like a psychopath or something. Anyway, it's 2023, soon to be 2024, and Nintendo is still using friend codes. Not to mention, you have to download an app on your cell phone to use online voice chat. Dude, this shit's gotta stop. I hope that when the new console comes out, Nintendo makes it a point to leave the past behind and join the modern world with unique gamer tags, party chat, and achievements. Seriously, I would go back and replay a ton of games if they added in achievements, or at least gave devs the option to import their achievements that they have on Xbox and PlayStation. At the very least, Nintendo needs to iron out their online servers. Splatoon runs great, but games like Super Mario 3D World were terrible at launch when it came to online play. Hopefully, Wonder will be better. I would really like to be able to play all of these great co-op games online reliably. I can't think of a company with a more storied library than Nintendo. Some of the most influential games of all time were made by Nintendo, so to not port them to their modern consoles feels like such a shame. Nintendo seems to love controlling their own supply and demand when it comes to their games. These games somehow cost more today than they did at launch. Like, come on, man. Sell your older games. I am willing to give you my money. When it comes to supporting older titles, I don't think anyone does it better than Xbox. Hundreds of games are backwards compatible on the Series X, and you can even still buy older games and still play them if they're available. Now, I know the Switch can't play Wii games for obvious reasons, but it would be great if Nintendo started making their older games more accessible so people don't have to sail the high seas to play Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. I feel like the Wii and Wii U and DSs were really good at supporting older titles. What happened? We have most of the tech to play these games on modern consoles. Yeah, I know they have the Nintendo Switch online service, but that thing is pretty terrible. A lot of these games feel like shovelware. I know, there are some gems on there. I'm not saying there are no good games. I don't get it. Why doesn't Nintendo put more of their first-party games on here? To make things worse, they're not even available to purchase separately, so no matter how bad you want to play Mother 3, you can't do it on the Switch. I hope that whenever the Switch 2 comes out, Nintendo makes it a priority to preserve their legendary library and make it more accessible for people to play their older games, like they did in the past, whether that be through NSO or purchasing them separately. One of the best things about the Switch is the ability to seamlessly transition from handheld to TV by simply placing the console in the dock. It's a great idea and fundamental to the premise of the Switch. That being said, the dock could really use a makeover. When the OLED came out, Nintendo finally added in an Ethernet port so players who wanted to could add in a wired internet connection. Besides that, the dock feels relatively cheap, just a chunk of plastic with some ports in it. When the Switch 2 rolls around, I would love to see a dock that feels a bit more premium and maybe even have some performance upgrades. An Ethernet port should be a lock at this point, but it would also be great to have some higher quality plastic or material for the dock, just to make it feel a bit more sturdy. Adding in some sort of felt or cloth on the inside would be a welcome addition also, because I found out the hard way that if you don't ease your Switch into the dock, you can scratch your screen, particularly the OLED one. The biggest potential add-in though would be packing in some hardware into the dock. By putting some firepower in the dock, the Switch itself can be lighter, have improved battery, and just dedicate itself entirely to being handheld. Then, when you dock it, the dock can upscale any sort of games you're playing to 4K and maybe even increase the frame rate. Now, I know this makes the dock more expensive, but I think that plays into my earlier point about having options. Maybe they can keep a cheaper dock that outputs at just 1080p still or something. I don't know. I don't think the Switch 2 itself needs to be 4K, especially in handheld, but it does need to be able to output 4K on TVs somehow, which brings me to my next point. This is one of the most complained about problems with the Switch. Even when it launched in 2017, it was considered underpowered. Now, almost 7 years later, the little console that could is still chugging along. Barely. First-party Nintendo games like Tears of the Kingdom and Metroid Prime run surprisingly well, and they look pretty decent graphically. Third-party games are a bit of a mixed bag though. Older games that have been ported to the Switch, like BioShock and Skyrim, run smoothly. Some of these ports are truly amazing. On the other hand, some devs just want to cash in on the Switch's player base and try to straight up port the game over without optimizing it for the Switch's limited hardware. This results in either a terrible glitchy port or a game that has been so downgraded that it's hard to even compare it to its PlayStation and Xbox counterparts. Yeah, I know some developers are using cloud gaming, but that requires a good internet connection to play. What is this, the PlayStation Portal? We need better hardware in the Switch. Like I mentioned earlier, the Switch itself, the handheld part of it, doesn't need to be some super machine that's huge and clunky. It just needs to be somewhat competitive with modern consoles. Just enough so that third-party studios can look at the Switch as a viable platform for releases. Better hardware equals more games. And yeah, if I have the option to buy a game for my Switch without it looking like it came out in 2010, I'm gonna take that option, simply for the portability and convenience of it. The Switch 2 can really capitalize on its uniqueness if it gets its hardware figured out. I think if the Switch 2 can shoot for 1080p, 60 FPS handheld, that would be a massive win. Then, if possible, put the 4K upscaling in the dock. It might be a bit of a stretch, but I think that would be the ideal scenario. If nothing else from this list makes it to fruition, this one has gotta be there, please. Do you remember the menu on the Wii or the DS? Those were incredible. Each tile had its own special music and background. It felt very unique. I mean, even the store had its own music, and it was iconic. It is seriously such a shame that the kids who are growing up with the Switch don't get to listen to bops like this while they beg their parents for their credit card. The level of personalization that Nintendo used to offer was incredible. One of the best things about the DS was being able to buy custom themes from your favorite games. It gave the home screen new music and beautiful backgrounds. Real backgrounds. The Switch doesn't even allow you to change your background. Okay, you can switch from light to dark theme, but that's nothing compared to the capabilities we used to have. Despite its hardware limitations, there are so many incredible looking games on the Switch, and they've made it so much easier to capture screenshots with the capture button. Let me use these pictures as backgrounds, please! I would love for the Switch 2 to have more personality, whether that be allowing us to add custom themes and backgrounds, or just supporting devs who want custom sounds and backdrops for their games, kind of like what the PlayStation 5 does. We just need something to give the Switch a bit more life, something that makes it feel a bit more personal or special to the user. At the end of the day, I don't want Nintendo to try and blow everyone's socks off with a new gimmick or something. I don't need them to reinvent the wheel here. Just take the Switch and make it more. That's all we need, a new and improved Switch. A Switch 2.0. What do you guys think? What do you want Nintendo to do next? Is there a particular feature you really want to see? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed my rambling, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys as always, and I will catch you in the next one.